Hey everybody, I'm Sean.
And I'm Tiff.
And today on the Random Division, Season 2, Episode 5, we are talking about...
music of the decade.
Yes, music.
And
Tiff, that you
specifically,
found this very challenging, very
well,
hard
because
homework.
It's not just music
Would
of
your
the decade.
parents be emailing me about this homework if you were like a middle schooler?
No, my parents would be like,
This homework was
stop
too
complaining
hard."
and do your homework. Don't come out until it's finished. My parents had no sympathy for me and working hard. They were like, yeah, you should work harder. You should do bonus points, is what they would say.
You can't have 3 favorite albums of the year. You have to have 5 of them.
Yeah, which is what I was pouting about 10 minutes ago.
Yep.
So specifically, we are discussing the 5 best albums from the last decade.
Well, our 5 favorite.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, well,
Yeah, we're not...
what I perceive to be the 5 best albums of the last decade.
Great.
And the issue that I have with this, and maybe why I don't make an excellent choice for podcast guest on this episode, is because I believe that albums have progressively gotten worse in the last decade.
Uh-huh.
So I do not believe there are many great albums collected as a collection.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are great songs.
Okay.
And that we are, that those great songs certainly get added to my playlist. But I do not sit and listen to albums completely through when they are, when they come out, when they're released. It's very rare for me to do that. Now, like in the last 10 years, it's been rare. And I looked at my favorite albums, and it turns out that many of, essentially after 2015, nothing good has come out, in my opinion.
Huh. As
a complete album that I can listen to. I do have some rules about what makes the album great.
Okay.
So in order for an album to be truly fantastic,
Yep.
I have to be able to sit through each song without skipping ahead to the next song.
Yeah. None of them? No skippable songs?
I cannot skip any songs. Okay. Without losing the vibe of the album entirely. So if there's just one random song that does not belong and it disrupts the flow, that's not allowed for me. And I need to experience the album without getting so angry at the stupidity of a song that I decide to switch to random mode on Spotify playlist. So when it's
I've never seen you angry listening to a song.
Well, it usually happens in the car when I'm driving by myself.
Okay. When you really have to, you're really like the song is the only thing you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really need the album to be great.
Yep.
And it has to tell a story. It has to be a collection. It's similar, the episode in How I Met Your Mother, where the limo episode, where they're going to all those New Year's Eve.
Yeah, when they pick up Fake Moby.
And Barney has this mix CD that he.
Yep.
It's called I don't know, it's supposed to be the Epic Good Time list or whatever mix he names it. And he says that a common misperception is that a good mix has to rise and fall. Mm-hmm. And his mix, he claims, is the best because it's all rise, baby.
Rise, yeah.
It's all rise. So I don't necessarily need that to be the case, but I do need the songs to be a collection.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, they need to be cohesive.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
But no skippable songs. So that actually narrowed down the list because it turns out as I was going through albums, I was like, oh, I do have quite a list of favorite albums. The issue is that in order for them to be truly fantastic and, in my top 5, I can't skip through them when I listen to them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think that's fair. I think a lot of people would categorize a good album as having a flow, a cohesiveness, and something you can just put on and not have to worry. Like you could put it on and not be near your phone to skip a song or the CD player or whatever.
Like in the days when, we didn't really grow up with vinyl. Technically, it's made a comeback, and we have a record player in our house more as like a hipster thing rather than a thing that we grew up with. But I think it's very similar to that. Like back when, that's what I mean by I think albums are not as great as they used to be, which makes me sound like grandpa.
It does.
But
this is 2 weeks in a row.
This is just saying that like when you came out with this, you used to come out with CDs or tapes or records, and there wasn't, I guess with a CD player you can skip songs, but the idea was somebody's buying that CD and they're going to sit and listen to all of those songs. It's a collection.
Yeah.
And now with Spotify, with streaming services, people really, they get hooked on a song and then they might jump around to 2 or 3 songs. And I think people are releasing songs ahead of time, ahead of albums.
Well, that's always been the case.
Right, but that was weird.
Yeah.
Alexa just turned on.
Yeah. I think it's because I said, I don't know. Sometimes she thinks she hears her name. She's getting older.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like her, yes. What?
What'd
we're in
you
the other room.
say?
I can't hear you from the other side of the apartment.
Yeah, so I just think artists are not putting as much into albums as they used to. Like I remember when I used to wait for a CD to release, and I was so thrilled to figure out like how all of the songs tell a complete story. Like Mariah Carey.
You sound so old.
I know.
And cranky.
I know.
Very old and cranky.
All right, well.
I do think
that's my get off my lawn pitch.
That was, yes. I mean, now that people stream music and you have all of this stuff at your fingertips, and I think singles there are more singles that just live on an album probably now than they did in the past. I think I would say that's probably fair. And people like Taylor Swift release, sometimes she releases like 4 songs off of an album before anyone hears the album. And they'll get released months in advance. I can't really remember if that was the case in the past when people listened to the radio and that was how music was kind of disseminated. And now I don't know. I don't listen to the radio for music. I don't really listen to the radio for anything other than like the sports, like local sports stations. So, yeah, I don't know. I think you're partly right, but I think there's more good music. You could argue there's more good music now than there has ever been because there are so many different ways to find it. I mean, you love Lizzo. Lizzo is not someone who you would ever have found in 2005 or 2000 or 1995. She would have never been discovered. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
Even someone like Bieber, like discovered on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's also that side of it where if you're good enough, you're going to be found on SoundCloud or American Idol or whatever. I mean, I don't know. Like the rise of those types of ways for music has at least made it more independent. I think. I'm not in the music world, but that's what I would assume. You can just put stuff online for free and be found. You don't have to stand on a corner and hope people take your CD and stick it in their CD player when they get home. Like the olden days when people would just, you'd walk through a street in New York and you'd get like handed CDs.
I know.
Like,
I was just in New York recently and a guy tried to hand me a CD and I was like, what decade is it?
It happened to me this summer. A guy stopped me and he handed me the CD and he was like, I'm going to sign the CD for you. I was like, okay.
Oh my God.
He takes a Sharpie out, he signs it, he gives it to me, and then he tells me it's $10. And I said, I don't have any money, and this was
this
not
sounds like the beginning
deal.
of a mugging.
This was not the deal in the transaction. This is like down by Union Square.
And also, you're like, I have no way to play this.
I was like, I have $5. I gave him the $5, and he was kind of angry. He was like a little bit upset. And he was like, I'll keep it anyways. Because he signed it with my name on it too. He like signed it and then it was like to Sean.
This is poor salesmanship.
Really bad. But I didn't have, wasn't my place to tell him.
You need to change
kind of
your
weird
code of business.
Yeah, I don't know where that CD is now. Because you're right, we have like, do you play it on the PlayStation 4, maybe? Is that how we would listen to CDs?
No. Oh my goodness.
I think it is how we would in this house, right?
I think you have that old Bose clock radio.
Oh, my clock radio has a CD player in it too. That's right.
Yeah.
That's the OG in the house. He's like the oldest piece of technology.
He is the oldest piece of technology. Because even our record players knew.
Yeah. I think that Bose I had when I started college. That makes it 18 years old.
Ooh, vintage.
Yeah, old school. Okay, so before we get to our actual albums, I did have a couple topics. Some of we just hit on, but outside of albums, do you just have who were your favorite artists of this decade? Because if you did listen to a lot of singles, I found that I had artists that I really liked that none of their albums really stood out to be on my favorite 5, but there's definitely artists that I would put on and listen to, that I could listen to them for, an hour or two, just bouncing around randomly.
Yeah. Why don't you start with yours?
Oh, okay. So
your favorite artists.
So some of my favorite artists of this decade were Vampire Weekend.
Yes. Uh-huh.
They released 3 albums, and that I listen to them a lot. I love them. I saw them kind of when they were, to use a Barney phrase you use, on the rise way back in Cambridge, before their first album even came out. So they kind of just have always had a part of my heart. And Bon Iver is another one who released a bunch of albums, and I could listen to and just put on, and just like good background music. Carly Rae Jepsen.
Yeah, she's on my list.
She is another one who's just been solid. Dawes, who we've seen a handful of times in person, in concert. They don't have any albums on my list, but they have like 4 pretty solid albums that I would listen to. I would argue my favorite album by them is from 2009. Sturgill Simpson, who just released an album, and that kind of like melted everyone's brains. Has a bunch of good albums this year, or this decade. Kanye. I'm just listing people, but like people that I've listened to, I think have just been important.
Definitely.
To like stuff that I've listened to. How about you?
For me, it would be
Taylor Swift, obviously.
Yeah, it would be Carly Rae Jepsen, of course, which you already mentioned. Maren Morris. Do you know her?
Yep.
Okay. Casey Musgraves.
Yep. I think people are already picking up on a theme of our music split.
Yes. Taylor Swift has to be on here. Lizzo, you already mentioned her, even though she's a newcomer.
She's new. She's new to the decade.
It's hard for me to like put her album on my list because of that. But I would say, Lorde. Mm-hmm. Definitely Lorde. Took a break there for a little bit, but came back because she had to graduate high school. Freaking
and then like try to have some new experiences so she can write a new album.
Genius child.
Yep.
Sarah Bareilles and kind of
musical writer too. That's an interesting.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I've loved Sarah Bareilles since the beginning, since the very first album, since the whole "I'm Not Gonna Write You a Love Song" days. I've loved her.
Is that her first? Was that her first album?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Why? What did you think it was?
For some reason in my mind, that song is a later single in her single.
Oh,
catalog.
maybe it is. Maybe I'm just being focused on my own experience. But that was when I first became aware of her.
Oh, okay.
I don't really know. I haven't like fact checked on what her debut song or single was.
Oh, okay. You said it like that was.
But yeah,
you were there
I have
from the start.
Well, that song is old.
Okay.
I mean, that song came out in 2009 maybe? 8?
Really?
When did that come out?
As you're looking that up, Arcade Fire is another great band. And then someone we saw this past summer, Maggie Rogers.
Oh yeah, Maggie Rogers.